The episode begins with Ms. Coble crafts a necklace to wear Petey's chip around her neck, symbolizing her control over his fate. Mr. Grainer calls Ms. Coble, informing her that the interference on the chip traces back to Rugabe. She then prays at her shrine to Keir Egan, invoking guidance. Meanwhile, Mark goes down to the basement to check Petey's phone, which is filled with missed calls from a blocked number. He drives off to work and disposes of the phone in an outside garbage bin, seemingly severing his ties to the mystery. At Lummen, Bert leads Irving to a room full of green plants, calling it their secret place. Bert holds Irving's hand, mentioning that the manual doesn't prohibit lip-to-lip contact. Irving, however, refuses, stating he's not ready. They stand close, their foreheads touching in an intimate yet uncertain moment. Outside, Devon walks through the snow with her baby Eleanor on her chest. She encounters Gabby, who no longer seems to recognize her. Devon reintroduces herself, but Gabby's family seems completely different. Her son's name is Bradley, not William as Devon remembers. Gabby's husband, Angelo, introduces himself, and they quickly leave, leaving Devon confused and unsettled. Back at Lummen, Mark continues reading Ricken's book, which speaks about camaraderie and connection. Irving suggests that the four of them, Dylan, Mark, Helly, and himself, should unite the OND and macrodata departments. Helly agrees, suggesting they take another mental health walk. Mark and Dylan interact as tensions rise. Dylan accuses Mark of flirting with Helly, but they quickly cover it up when Mr. Milchick arrives, asking what they are talking about. They agree they were discussing Ms. Casey. Mark then asks where she is. Ms. Coble informs them that Ms. Casey failed in her duties to guard Helly and has been sent to the break room. Mark insists that it was his fault and that he should have gone instead, claiming he was simply looking out for Helly's mental health. Ms. Coble shows Mark the security footage, questioning him about what they do at Lummen. She demands they serve Keir and revokes Macrodata's hallway privileges, asserting control over them. Helly, now sketching in silence, catches Dylan's attention as he laments the loss of Ms. Casey. He then asks Helly about her relationship with Mark, to which she firmly responds that nothing happened between them. Mark returns to the group and informs them that Ms. Casey is in the break room. He also tells them that their hallway privileges are revoked until they hit quota. Irving apologizes, acknowledging that he's been setting a poor example. Mark then asks Irving for directions to OND. As they make their way down the hallway, Coble and Milchick observe the team's movements on the security cameras. When the Macrodata team arrives at OND, Bert takes them into the back, where strange machines are being worked on. Bert introduces them to the OND crew, declaring that Macrodata refinement is now here. One of the OND workers, Elizabeth, asks what they actually refine. Irving inquires about her watering can. Bert explains that they think they're making supplies for upstairs, though Elizabeth notes that it was Hatchet's last week. Felicia hushes her, adding to the secrecy of the work. Mark talks about the baby goats and suggests they should work together to find answers, to understand the goats, the size of the facility, and the number of workers involved. Bert agrees, saying that Keir would want them to be partners in knowledge. However, Helly is skeptical. Later, Dylan pockets a mysterious instructional card featuring images of two men. As the Macrodata team heads back to their department, Milchick observes, and Ms. Coble is waiting for them. Back at the office, Ms. Coble sings a hymn in praise of Keir, while Mr. Grainer takes Mark to the break room. As Mark walks down the hallway, he runs into Ms. Casey, who exits awkwardly as they squeeze past each other. Mark and Alexa are out for dinner. Mark, with red marks on his knuckles, explains they're from lifting a water cooler at work. Alexa asks if he ever thought about having kids. Mark shares that he and Gemma tried, but it didn't take, and they had talked about adoption but decided to live life to the fullest instead. They laugh together as they talk about Severance, easing the tension. At home, Devon does some research on Gabby and discovers her husband is a senator who supports legalized severance. Rickon arrives to fetch her for a lactation consultation with Mrs. Selvig. Mrs. Selvig hums the Keir hymn as she calms baby Eleanor, adding a sense of foreboding. Meanwhile, a little boy watches loud cartoons on TV, counting past 700. Innie Dylan gains consciousness in a closet with Milchick. Milchick demands to know about the ideographic card Dylan stole at OND. Dylan, mesmerized by the sight of his Audi's home, reveals that he hid it in the bathroom at work. The little boy enters, calling Dylan Daddy. Milchick pulls him away, insisting he continue counting. Dylan is confused as the boy hugs him. Milchick talks on the phone, instructing someone to end the situation. A switch is flipped, and Dylan's consciousness shifts again. Dylan's son hugs him once more as he comes back to reality. Dylan carries his son out of the closet, and the scene is thick with tension. Mark and Alexa are about to call it a night when Mark notices a poster on a wall for a punk/metal show featuring June. He films the performance as June sings, "Fuck you, Lumen. I hate you, Lumen." The energy of the show gets to them, and they join in. Afterward, Mark meets June and compliments her band. June reveals she doesn't remember her father's final song, leaving Mark to explain that he knew it well. A fight breaks out, and Mark and Alexa leave, exchanging an understanding look. Later, Mark, feeling guilty and unresolved, digs Petey's phone out of the garbage. It rings, and Mark answers. A woman on the other end asks, "Who is this?" Mark responds that he's a friend of Petey's. She then asks if he's Mark Scout and what Petey told him before he died. Mark says he wants to understand, and she asks if he can come meet her now. Two maintenance men install sliding doors in the macrodata department as Mark heads to the college campus. There, he meets the older woman from the phone call. She asks if he's alone and insists he follow her. Stay tuned for amazing recaps.